Hello, everybody, and welcome to our third episode of Finding Balance with Facey and Coley. Coley is practicing mindfulness, and really strangely, and he thought that this would be a good
Oh yeah,
idea for our entrance into.
feel better. I
Wow.
feel good right now.
It took a
I
he'd
feel
been
really
doing that
good.
for at least 30 seconds, which
I was trying to go a minute.
what well, the irony is
I
how
was trying to
well
go a minute.
30 minutes works
Mhm.
well just to find different levels of
Mhm.
mindfulness and finding some sort of place within yourself that you can go back to and kind of center yourself. And we don't want to
Mm.
sound cheesy, but at the same time, Eastern philosophers, Eastern religious
Mhm.
scholars actually were onto something pretty good.
Oh, definitely. Did you know? Have you heard of the Greater Good Science Center
Uh,
out in California? We've
are
talked about
you
it a little
asking
bit.
me
Yeah,
like
because
I'm an
actually,
idiot?
I've
Yeah.
we actually both took a course
Yes,
in the
we did.
science of happiness. It's put on by really the Greater Good Science Center, which belongs to UC Berkeley. But one of the practices that it's taking place in some of the elementary schools before testing out in California is mindfulness. And did you
Yeah.
know that their test scores are actually better if they take a few moments in class to really meditate? They call it mindfulness,
Yeah.
which is the same thing, before they take the test on test day. And the scores are actually showing improvements.
No, of course. There is something, just
Mm-hmm.
as teachers, you start realizing test anxiety and a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
issues are just coming up because there's not enough pause and calming before the test. You see a lot of teachers spaz out. Hate to say that, but we all do, especially when it comes to standardized testing. So it'd be a good opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And we were talking about mindfulness, and you wanted to talk about self
Self
care,
care.
and I do too.
And he does too.
But at the same time, I wanted to talk about blue zones.
Blue zones,
So,
which we think that they're connected.
yeah, the most definitely. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so blue zones, if you guys, it's in the news, it's in a documentary on Netflix right now. I don't want to give any advertisement
Oh, okay.
to them. I just want to be
I don't mind it because
okay.
I do it all the time.
Can we get money
It's
from Netflix?
I don't know.
I think we
I
have
think
to
it's
get
worth
at
a shot.
least 30
Do
subscribers.
you? Hey, which by the way, thank you to all our subscribers. I think we got like 16 now.
What?
Well, we had 15, but maybe I haven't looked in a while, so
I
maybe we
like
have
your
16.
dream. Yeah, you and Mr. Positivity
Mm-hmm.
is trying to get some other subscribers in there.
Yeah.
But my thought process is let's talk about blue zones and then go into self
Self
care.
care. Okay.
Like, so one example of a blue zone, or what is that, Matt? Well, a blue zone is more or less an area that has a high level of longevity
Mm-hmm.
uh, for their population,
Right.
right? So a long, you know,
They're living a long time.
they're living a very long
And
time.
when I think of people living a long time, I think of places like Okinawa.
Okinawa,
I think of Japan.
Sardinia,
Sardinia
Italy
is
is a
a
great
good one.
one. Different parts of the world, a lot of Southeast Asian countries or parts of Southeast
Mm-hmm.
Asia. And the reason I said, oh, we can make this fit with
Self
like
care.
self
Mm-hmm.
care is because of the practice of their everyday
Yeah,
lives.
I think those places they have some very common themes. They have commonalities in their cultures that I
Yeah.
think actually promotes
Yeah. Of
longevity.
course, diet's part of that. And we know that. I mean, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big boy. We don't mind.
I think, exercise,
Exercise is something to do with it, but at the same point, like they just walk. Yeah.
activity. Yeah, staying
Like
active.
it's not about jogging, it's just about
No,
walking.
it's just about walking.
Like it's funny, people that are living 90 to 100 years old, the only difference in their lives than others is the fact that they walk at least an hour a day. Isn't that crazy?
It is.
Just the fact
yeah.
that they walk. It's not speed, it's just
No.
having that cardiovascular activity that gets them going. No offense to you
Oh,
because
no.
you're a hardcore running freak.
Well, thank you.
I mean, freak, I hate to call you
Yeah.
a freak.
Well, that's okay. So if you think, so I would say if jogging is self-care,
Jogging.
I'm getting it
Yeah.
out the wazoo, Well, okay. So
That's a lot.
I'm getting a lot of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so going back to some commonalities of these places, another one would be sense of community, right? They got
Oh, yeah.
strong sense of community. So they're, because I'm a big believer that people need people, and in these communities, they tend to be really close.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of close, connected relationships.
Yeah, and people take care of one another,
Yeah.
which we
take
don't
care of
see.
They take care of their elderly.
And they take care of their elderly. So within the community, and what brings up self-care, and that's so important, is that a lot of people choose, especially in the United States, like, let me be me. It's kind of a constant attitude I hear about. Specifically, we are in the South, in the deep South, so you tend to hear people bring up issues where let me do my thing.
Yeah.
How do
I think-
we promote and kind of create this self-care living, especially, and this is me too, with the stresses of everyday life?
Right.
What do you think?
And I think I agree. And I think thinking about some of those places, and we talked a little bit about diet. If you mentioned the South, I think one thing that we've gotten used to here are really large portions. We're not known for a whole lot of exercise here,
Understatement, yeah.
and so I think those are two things that kind of go together.
Yeah.
Obviously.
We like our wings. I think about that a lot.
Yeah, and one thing when I think about like Japan
I
and
love fried
Okinawa,
food.
I think about not just taking care of the elderly, but I think about the elderly getting out and getting involved. They're still involved in the communities.
Yeah.
You see a lot of people here as they get a little older, they retire. I just don't feel like they're as active in many cases.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
And they're not involved in community
Yeah.
activities quite as much. And if they are, they're not necessarily. It's not necessarily active activity.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with the type of activities that we all do, on a daily basis, right? So oftentimes our activities tend to be based on TV. We're watching TV. Guilty, by the way. I was watching before you came, Parks and Recreation, Rewind.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you can get just
Now-
caught up in the binge watching world.
Could you
Do that while
Make
on
it-
a Peloton.
yeah. Make it an active
No, you really can.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think we as, Americans have to think about, like doing those things that we would not normally, like we would usually sit on the couch and do, and then find a stationary bike, something cheap like Yahoo, you can find anything Facebook Marketplace. I think we all could do something like that, right? So, you got it. We're much more capable than
for sure.
many of the less developed countries that are living up to 100. So why don't we?
Why don't we? One thing
Culturally, why don't we?
Why don't we? I had a friend for a little while. His name was Willie Kanata. He was
Are we supposed to?
I don't know.
bring
And
up
Willie, if
real-
you're watching this, gosh, I would love for you to
First.
subscribe. But
First and last
I love
name?
Willie. I love
Oh,
Willie.
that's bad news.
Willie came from
that's terrible.
from Cameroon. Gosh,
Okay.
I do hope he watches or somehow gets this message because I love Willie. And
Good
when
for
Willie
Willie.
when
Never
Willie
met
came
you.
over, he didn't have a driver's license, and so he and I got together, and we were going out on Sundays to practice driving. And Willie and I were probably about the same age. Well, he said one thing that he noticed that was a big difference between Americans and Cameroonians. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how to. Is that on a Sunday morning, like when we were practicing, no one was outside. Hardly. He said that you don't hardly have anybody outside their homes doing anything on a Sunday morning when we were out driving.
Yeah.
Now that's not always true, because you've got I see runners and walkers all the time, but in his eyes, they're very few and far between. But
Yeah.
he said in Cameroon, on a Sunday morning, everybody's outside, everybody's active, and everybody's running around doing stuff. There's a lot of life. He felt like there wasn't as much life here on a Sunday morning, for instance.
With a lot of insulation. No,
Yeah.
that was good.
Well,
I mean, I
yeah.
hate to use a guy's first and last
God,
name
and
as an
he
example.
could play some soccer too. He was.
What's
so
he
good.
up to? Why haven't you talked to him recently?
Well, I think he moved.
Back to Cameroon?
I don't know.
Because he was tired of us?
Well, it's kind of interesting. So his family, really his siblings, they all wanted to leave Cameroon.
Yeah.
And some of them went to Europe. He had a
Okay.
sister in, I think, in France, and a sister in Germany, and he decided to come to the United States. But they were all looking for a better life. Money, was probably one of their main goals, but really looking for an opportunity that they didn't feel like they could get in Cameroon.
Yeah. Well, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know where he's at. I'm going to look up the guy.
I'm
going
I
to
would,
look up the guy if you
I
don't.
would, yeah.
Oh, and we're going to have him as a guest. He'll visit.
He did get his driver's license, by the way.
Good job.
And once he got his driver's license, I didn't hardly see him again. Because he was on the move, right? He was on the go.
He was busy man.
But I loved it.
Yeah, good for him for using
I know.
you. Smart move, Willie.
I loved it.
It was Willie, right?
It was Willie. Willie
Yeah.
Canada. Spelled like Canada. But Canada.
Such a smart move to take advantage of. Gullible, naive, white American man.
Oh, man, it was my pleasure.
I know. Isn't
So,
it fun?
Thinking about self-care, what are some self-care practices, thinking about longevity and
That we
self-care,
can all do.
that we can all do,
And that we don't always do.
don't always do it?
Because we are not by any means.
No,
we have to
professional
say that.
self-care givers.
We have to
Yeah.
say.
We are works in progress.
You are better at focus now because your kids are older and things like that. I'm just starting to jump on the bandwagon, getting a little healthier, getting a little smarter, just about the everyday of happiness and mindfulness.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
Tell me.
we talked a little bit about this before we actually pushed play right here, but you're looking really sharp. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he hasn't always looked quite this
I
good,
was a
but you're looking
schlub.
good right
Schlub is kind of the word I would use for myself.
now. Mm-hmm.
And it was more or less just once you have kids, guys, I'm the first to admit you don't give up, but you have priorities. And so you become the last priority.
You got littles, too.
Oh,
They're
little
small.
ones. Yeah, because I waited until I was way old. Hopefully I make it.
Way old.
But now I'm thinking about blue zones because
Yeah.
I need to survive to 90. So my kids,
yes.
I want to witness my kids,
Mhm.
grandkids, great grandkids. And so maybe that's why blue zones are becoming such a hot topic because people aren't having kids until later. But I was a schlub, right? And because I was focusing on them now, since they're, they're both over 5, and it's time for me to start getting my life together. And I see my wife, she was automatically like, I'm getting myself together too and getting her focus. And so I was not going to be alone. So being like the loser who just,
well, you're not.
I just didn't want it.
Yeah, no,
I
you're
just
not
didn't
a
want
loser
it.
by far.
I mean, I will say I ended up eating pizza last night and it was delicious.
It was,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, I know you don't do those things.
Well,
But I had a
pizza,
blast.
And there's a few people watching right
No,
here.
no,
They
my
can
kids
confirm
even
that
said,
I
how
eat
many
pizza?
No,
I do eat pizza.
it was even weird. Like my kids ate like a big slice. It was like this big. It was a huge slice of pizza. And they're like, how many slices? This is as I'm putting them to bed. They're like, oh man, how many? Oh, I had one. That was a lot. How many slices did you have? And I was, of course, full. and we were sleeping, and I went, I had 3, and they just looked at me like disgusted, like, oh,
But did you say,
like
hey, I'm like
gross.
6'4"?
Six
I can.
five, by the way,
Oh,
6'5" and a
6'5".
half.
6'5.5". So
I'm a big
almost,
boy.
yeah,
Yeah, I
almost
need that for,
6'6".
and no,
You need.
it was
That's
nutrients.
probably not even enough
Cheese.
for you.
Oh, it had to be cheese. Yeah, which we know is not necessarily. Yeah, I could eat cheese all day, like a block of cheese.
But
I've done
moderation.
it. Yeah, but
And
moderation.
that's part of self care,
No, but
right?
that.
Moderation, boundaries,
But I have
finding moderation.
started to learn those things. Yeah, but diet's only actually, and I was telling you, it's
Yeah.
like 30%
Right.
of how we can change our
Mhm.
days to get into these blue zones, right?
Mhm.
So what's another self-care? Mindfulness, right?
Right. We talked about
Meditation.
mindfulness, meditation, and this is something that I started for a little while,
Yeah.
and I haven't been doing it. It's something that I know is good and it works for a lot of people and it helps is journaling. A lot of
Yeah.
people find a lot of comfort in
Mm-hmm.
journaling, which I think is a great way of self care. And really, whenever I was journaling, I did feel really good. I just haven't.
What'd you write?
What did I
Your
write? Well, I was
feelings?
talking. I did write my feelings, and I would tell about each day, like the things that got me excited. Right
Oh,
now,
that's good.
if you were to go back and read mine, now I know a lot of people use it as almost like therapy
Oh,
because
yeah.
they can talk about the things that bothered them throughout the day, and that's a way
Yeah, man.
of relieving some of that pain.
Man, if I journaled when we were teaching together,
Oh yeah,
oh, I
right.
would have written
Oh,
so much smack
oh,
about
I would
you.
have loved to have read
Oh,
that.
it would have been awesome. It would have been so cool.
It would have been good.
Yeah.
And you're probably mentioned a couple of times in my journal.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah.
Well, I'm just, but like I said, I kept it positive. There's some funny parts because this is because
Because
there'll
another
be
one,
yeah,
positivity.
and you don't have to be. This is one that I've struggled with because I try to force myself to be positive a lot, but
You
I
do
know that
force
that's not necessarily healthy
Yeah.
because in one of our topics was vulnerability, and I'm trying to get better at being vulnerable and allowing myself to
Be open.
be open and not feel like I have to be
On,
positive and happy
all the time.
on all the
Yeah.
time.
You really are on all the time.
Well, I
It's
try,
exciting.
but thank you. But it's not always actually what I feel.
No.
It's what I
Oh, and it's
present.
obvious. Yeah.
Oh, you catch on like
Oh,
sometimes?
I'm a very empathetic person.
Oh, thanks.
So I can sense it.
You can sense, yeah.
I'm like, oh God, even if you come out strong, just like start jogging
Right? You're
in
like
place.
he's covering for something, right?
This guy has some.
This guy's got
This
some
guy's
issues
got
going
some
on.
stuff. He's just
Oh
feeling
man.
it.
So another one you mentioned is walking activity.
Activity.
It didn't necessarily have to be hardcore exercise.
Or 15 miles.
Or it was actually over 15 miles today, but but that was kind of bragging, and I would like to take that back.
We'll edit.
But
we edit
we won't
everything
edit
because
it.
we know
Actually,
how
we're
to.
one takers. We never edit anything.
We will.
That'll be in there.
We're gonna start editing it. We just edit very well.
We're just good at one take because it's honest, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. So other than that, we need to make sure that they understand the science of mindfulness and UC Berkeley's research.
Yeah,
how
the
great
Greater
it
Good
is.
Science Center, which
Yeah.
they'll come out with. If you subscribe to them, they'll send out information all the time. But a lot of it a lot of it's focused on teachers.
Yeah.
Some of it's focused on other professions. But it's all great information. I really like the ones they sent out about teachers because
Yeah.
that helps me with my.
When we
students.
audited, I felt like we were actually better teachers and a lot more mindful of our students before, especially it was right before COVID when we did all this
Right,
stuff.
yeah, that's exactly
Yeah,
right.
so
yes.
afterwards we were just more focused on their well-being than what they were, just their grades.
Right.
And I think we do have to find kind of a balance between that. I think we all need to find a balance,
We do.
And that's our job, finding balance with Facey.
And Coley, but real quick before we get, let me do.
I knew you were
let
going
me
to bring
do
it
one
up.
little promotion.
Promotion,
right here. I
not a
love
review.
Books, not a review. But Glennon Doyle, she's got this book Untamed, and it really goes more along.
Got a lot of notes in that book.
Oh yeah, and I actually, the person
Looks
who let me
very-
borrow it had lots of notes that
Wow.
they have written. Actually, I did write some in here because I was wanting my own daughter to
Yeah.
read it. But this really goes a little bit more with vulnerability
Love
than it does, and you would say self-care too, because being vulnerable is a part of self-care.
It
I
is.
think. But anyway, great book, Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Got to make it happen, huh?
Got to make it happen. Yeah.
Okay, so that is it
That's
for
it.
this episode of Facey
And Coley.
Finding Balance. Oh, we're getting better.
I think we're getting used to this
We're
thing.
getting really good.